We've been saying throughout this series that you have two kinds of family in your life, the family that you get and the family that you choose. And some of you, you're fortunate enough that you would choose some of the family that you got. You were born into them, adopted into them, and you're like, I like these people. I would choose these people. For others of us, let's be honest, family is the real F word for you. And regardless of what kind of background you come from, all of us augment that family. We add people to it. Other people that we would consider as close as family to us. You know, best friends and maybe colleagues, people that you work with. It could be obviously romantic partners. These are the family that you choose. And what we've been saying is you got to be careful about the family that you choose. Because in some ways, like the family you got, you are going to bear a family resemblance to the people that you choose to be closest to. You're going to start picking up on their quirks and their values and what they focus their life on. You're going to automatically begin to behave in certain ways and think in certain ways like the family that you choose. So be careful. Be selective with the family that you choose. You probably wouldn't want to choose my biological family because we're weird, really weird. I'm not talking about my wife and my kids. I mean, we're weird in our own way too. But the family that I grew up with, super weird. And if you were to hang out with my family that I grew up with for any length of time, you'll pick up on some of these quirks. Like one of the weird things that you'll notice right away is that we have these silly songs for each other. I've sang some of them from stage before, and I will bless your ears with them again today. My mom wrote most of them, so copyright Barbara Barkley. And she has a song for my sister Kate. And yes, I also married a Katie, so there's layers there. But my sister is also named Katie. And the song that my mom wrote for Katie, which we still sing to her today, and she's in her 30s, is She's My Katie Belady Baloo. Ooh, ooh. I mean, it's not much of a song. But that was their first dance when she and her husband Ryan got married, was to that song. It's very short. No, of course not. It's stupid. The one that my mom wrote for me, and sound, you might want to turn this down because it's loud. It's a tearjerker, but it's loud. Is Japopa-dopa, I love you, baby, because you're my baby, because you're my fire, because you're my another fire. Yeah, right. The origins of that sacred anthem are still elusive to us, and yet I know that song is mine. You got to be careful about the family that you choose because you are going to bear a family resemblance. You're going to pick up on some of the weird quirks. I love meeting people's families because it helps explain some of the quirks that I experience in you. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like when I do weddings between quirky people, which is all people, by the way. But I remember several years ago I did a wedding for people and they just demanded that the wedding was Shakespearean. So costumes, the language that we used for the ceremony was the weirdest thing. This is so strange. And then I met their family. And all of them were English professors and thespians. I'm like, oh, I'm the only one here who thinks this is weird. All of you think this is normal. So I love getting to know people through their families. And the question that we want to ask as we close out the series today is, what should be weird about this family? If this is the family that you choose, what should be so odd about us? I mean, I know what some people think is crazy about people who are trying to get closer and closer to Jesus. Like they might think, and you might think, people believe crazy things if they believe in Jesus, like a dead guy rose from the dead. I believe that. That's crazy. That's weird. You know, some of you, when you think about Jesus followers, you think about some of the crazy things that they post online that I wish they wouldn't post online, but that seems really weird. But on the whole, what quirks, what anomalies should you really see when you're closer and closer to Jesus people? Now, if you're not a Jesus follower, or maybe you've never been to church before, or you used to go to church, but it's been a long time, when someone invited you here, they invited you to church, I don't know what you expected. Based on your background or some assumptions that you had, maybe you expected more incense to happen, or a pipe organ. You know, maybe you expected me to be in a robe. Weird stuff. And if you hang out long enough, you'll realize we're not really religious in that way, but that doesn't mean we're not trying to be weird. We really are trying to be weird. And I think we should try to be weird because I think sometimes conversations around the Christian faith and Christian tradition are not dismissed by people because they're stupid and there's nothing to talk about. I think most of the time it's dismissed because Christians aren't all that different. Like, why would it matter? What's so provocative about you just because you're a Jesus follower? What is it? Is this just some big elaborate way to make friends and do something important together? Because If that's the case, I don't need a Bible to do that. And you're right. I don't need all these Jesus songs to do that. And you're right. I don't need to carve out an hour of my precious Sunday for that. And you're right. Bless you. I think we should be better at it in this place, better at friend making and better at making a difference together than anywhere else on the planet. I have good reason to believe we should be great at that, but it's not always the case. And if that's what you want to do with your time and with your life, then you don't necessarily need a church to get some of that. So what difference would it make to be a part of this family?
If you're getting any value out of this video, make sure to click that subscribe button because there's so much more where this came from. And also by simply liking and commenting, you're bringing value to other people's lives by making this content more available to them. We have lots of topics from how to find your purpose, fighting anxiety and depression, or how to have healthy relationships. There's so much in there. And you could find all of this for free by simply exploring the Radius channel.
Hey, real quick, if you're new this week, this part isn't for you. Just skip forward, ignore this. If you're new, we just want you to receive. But if you're someone who calls Radius your home and want to give where your heart is, text Radius LA to 77977, or just go to the website, radius.church/give, and there are several ways your generosity can help make a difference. Now let's jump back in.
One of the most common phrases that you see in the earliest Christian writings is this phrase, one another, and that's how we've centered and anchored this entire series. It seems like in people's first experience with Jesus 2,000 years ago that the closer they got to him, the closer they experienced life with one another. And in this correspondence that we still have, it's pretty crazy, we still get to read this stuff, letters that they wrote, they would describe what this one another was like, the quirks, the differences, the anomalies of this one another. Over 100 times one another shows up. But the passage I want to look at today, the excerpt from a letter I want to look at today, is the densest collection of one another's. There's more one another's in as many words here as anywhere else. And one of the assumptions that we can make from that is that this is actually the clearest description of what's supposed to be quirky about Jesus one another's. This might be the most explicit description of what this is supposed to be like and how weird we are really supposed to be together. Bless you. That's going around. Now, following Christ 2,000 years ago meant being mocked, beaten, imprisoned, ostracized from your family, which is the way people experience it still in many parts of the world. Whatever you read on the news, the fact is that Jesus followers are the number one targeted people group on the planet for violence. And that's not necessarily the case in the West for the most part, but it was in the developed world 2,000 years ago. If you were in Rome and you said you followed Jesus, that was life-threatening. And Paul, who started a bunch of churches, wrote letters to Jesus followers in all of these developing cities and villages and towns. And he wrote a letter to churches, kind of like this, in the world capital of Rome. And he said, even though you're getting a lot of pressure and it feels dangerous at times, you have got to stick together because the world needs your weird. And it was particularly hard for the Roman church because, like Los Angeles, it was a collection of people who'd come to Jesus from diverse backgrounds. They came to Jesus from different spiritual and religious backgrounds, came to Jesus from different ethnic backgrounds and socioeconomic backgrounds and political backgrounds. And they would have had plenty of reasons to split up, especially when the pressure was on. But Paul says, listen, you have to keep standing out together. Don't disappear. Don't become invisible. You have to stand out. You have to be weird because the world needs your weird. And here's how he inspires them to keep being weird together. He says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, which means different on purpose, and pleasing to God. Make God happy. This is your true and proper worship. That's a really important phrase he ends that sentence with. What he's saying is you could show up to church and sing all the songs, make sure that you're never tardy, check all the boxes, get in your small groups, and never tap into true worship if you are not, listen, living differently. That's how you let the world know I'm the most important relationship in your life. Offer your body not as a dead sacrifice like people are used to. I want you to live like it's all mine. Living sacrifice. The reason Paul says we should do that is because we've seen too much. In view of God's mercy, you just can't unsee it. God showed up in your life and he said, you're not a failure to me. You're not a burden to me. You're not an enemy to me. You're worth loving to death. That's the lens he dropped in front of you. So you don't look at the world the same way. You don't look at people the same way, because now in view of God's mercy, I just see you different. I don't see you as a loser. I don't see you as a failure. I don't see you as a burden. I don't see you as an enemy. And so I just move through the world differently because I don't see it the same way anymore. I've seen too much. So that's why Paul can say in the next sentence, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Stop taking your value cues from culture around you. I mean, there might be some good things to pick up on, but don't take all of your cues from that. Don't take your cues just from what's most convenient and most popular in terms of how to live and what to value and where to invest your life. Don't be ordinary. Do not be typical. Don't be common. Be weird, is what Paul is saying. That's the direct translation of the Greek. Since you've seen how God sees humanity, be weird. That's what it is. So in other words, another way to sum this up is, if I have a life-changing faith, I'm going to live a changed life. That's the most important thing to God. I'm going to live differently. You can't unsee this. God has shown you something, and you can try to ignore it. You can try to forget it because it's tough. But if you remember it, it's going to change how you live. It's going to change how you treat people. You're going to be different as a boss. You're going to be different as a friend. You're going to be different as a husband. You'll be different as a wife. You'll be different as a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a student. You're going to be different as a mom, different as a dad, because you've just seen too much. So in what way are we supposed to be weird? Weirdest. I know what some people think. They think that when they feel like an anomaly in the world around them, that the world around them or the tribe they run with doesn't share their same values. I know what they think it means to no longer conform to the pattern of the world around them. I know for most people what they think is being different means being critical. Oh, so I'm not supposed to conform to the world around me, so I will make fun of the world around me. I will demean the world around me. I will make sure that I condescend to the world around me. I will make sure I exclude myself from the world around me. And I know that a lot of that's just based on fear, but I'm still baffled by this. It is just, I can't wrap my head around why anybody who's a Jesus follower would expect somebody who is not a Christian to think or live or care about looking like a Christian, because they are not a Christian. Why do we continue? Maybe nobody here does this, but why would we try to foist our expectations of life on people who are not interested in it or are not sure they would believe that at all? Listen, if you find yourself right now living within a culture or living under a government that doesn't share all your values or of your beliefs, you are in great company. The first Jesus followers grew exponentially within a context that was opposed, incredibly opposed, diametrically opposed, categorically opposed to everything that they stood for and valued and believed. And what did they do? They didn't waste a whole lot of time trying to change the government. I mean, they spoke up and advocated for things because Jesus had compelled them to do that. But Paul, for instance, who was writing this letter, instead of wasting his time in a bunch of political debates, what we see in Paul's life is he would just invite politicians to the love of Jesus. Very offensive, but that was his orientation. Jesus, by the way, spent zero time trying to change the government. Zero. And at one point, people wanted him to be the government. He's like, nah, my kingdom's not of this world. Can't touch it. This isn't even close to the kingdom that I want to live for. That's our leader. What's so great about that is that means if you are a Jesus follower, you are relieved of the expectation that your government is your salvation. Amen? Okay, now that we've got that covered. So being different does not mean being critical and debating online. You should probably get that. Okay, I think what's supposed to be weird about us is summed up in verse 9 of this letter so perfectly. Here's what Paul says. Here's your weird. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good, which helps us understand the kind of love he's talking about. Not whatever kind of love you're comfortable with or whatever kind of love you make up. Love that doesn't pretend to love people, isn't just nice with people, doesn't just say that you love people. This is a love that moves people towards freedom. It hates the things that destroy us. It clings to, it attaches to, it's drawn to the things that give us life and freedom and hope. It's drawn to the things that are good. In other words, if our family's going to be weird, you know what it's going to be? Our family is supposed to be a public display of affection. Some good old PDA. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody have PDA? Anybody raised being warned not to show any PDA? Is this just me? Camp counselors, no PDA, no public displays of affection. I hope our Illum leaders next door in the middle and high school are saying, no PDA, because my daughter's in there, no PDA. High school teachers, no PDA on campus, no public displays of affection. Like if you go to Disneyland or Universal Studios and you see the people standing in line and they're facing each other with their hands in each other's back pockets, I hate that so much. I'm like, no PDA. If you do that, it's weird in the wrong way. Don't be weird like that. So strange. That's not what I'm talking about. This family, if it's all about Jesus, should be the kind of public display of affection that wants to draw people in. I can say that we live in a cultural moment right now that we can call post-Christian, and that's a beautiful gift to us, by the way, post-Christian, which means, it doesn't mean that people are necessarily rejecting the teachings of Jesus. It means that a lot of people we interact with have never even heard them. And they might be more open to good conversation. Most of the people I talk to are extremely open-minded if what they've encountered with Jesus followers is that they extend sacrificial love, real love, not just talk, real love to people who are left out, kept out, and checked out. If people are expressing real love, if they've met a Christian who's actually tangibly, oddly loving, maybe they want to hear more of what you want to say, of what you think. Have good conversations about your convictions and your values and your beliefs and how you arrived there. So what is this love supposed to look like in practice? Because I want us to be able to apply this. Well, Paul goes into explicit detail of what this love looked like, just so that there's no mistaking what kind of love we're looking at here. What kind of love should make us so odd and so weird? Now, I'm going to give you a heads up. This is a lot. Paul is verbose. He's just like classic at the run-on sentences in his writings. He just gets excited and then just, wah! I'm going to try and go through all of this, skim a stone across this, but you're not going to be able to apply all of it. In fact, here's my invitation to you. Right now, if you want to do this, I want you to pray. And I want you to pray, God, will you show me one new step of your kind of love you want me to take? Of all the things I'm going to share, I want you to pray right now. If you would, just say, God, first of all, bring my attention to, and then give me the courage to live out one step of love that we're looking at together right now. So what's this love supposed to look like? The first quality that Paul pulls out is that it means we're supposed to love people differently. The way we love people is supposed to look different. Here's how he explains it in verse 10. Be devoted to one another in love. We talked about that early on in the series. A great family sticks with each other beyond the point of agreement or convenience. They stick with each other. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, which is related to serving. That's how you know you're really getting spirituals, when you start serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Love differently. Now, if you were raised around some decent human beings, you should have learned how to be courteous, right? How to be kind, how to avoid hurting people's feelings if you can, how to look like you're interested in what they're talking about. If you're raised around some decent human beings, then you probably picked up some basic symptoms of what it means to be compassionate. You probably picked up the instinct to make sure that you're fighting injustice in a way that it's popular to fight injustice in your cultural moment. You probably picked up on those habits if you were raised around decent human beings. What Paul is describing here is 50 miles beyond polite, 50 miles beyond what's convenient, comfortable, and popular. This is going to take concentration. This is going to take effort. He says, will you honor people more often than you seek your own honor? Especially honoring people, with whom you would normally be jealous. Honoring those people more than seeking your own honor. Will you serve people with no strings attached? Will you serve with everything that you got? Don't lack in zeal. Will you give more than just your leftovers? I know it's normal to give when it's convenient and you share your leftovers. It's ordinary for people to tip when they're impressed with the service. But would you decide to change your lifestyle and your luxury so you can leave a legacy of caring for people because you're practicing a generous lifestyle, not just moments of sporadic giving because you feel compelled to or you heard a sad story? Now, this might seem weird, but will you serve by actively looking for the needs to be met rather than just when it so happens across your radar? Will you run towards messes Will you proactively seek out voids that need to be filled and ways that people need to be helped? Will you do that? Like when a few people here last year pooled their resources together so a few guys could go to the Unravel men's retreat. You guys did that. You didn't have to do that. Women did that, which I can understand why you did that, because of you do benefit when the guys come back healthier. Someone recently told me that they sold their car so they could free up more finances to give so we could serve more people. Jennifer Jackson, I found out, who serves in Rad City with the kids, she left a handwritten note to all of the teachers in all of the classrooms in the school when they started hosting us a few weeks ago. We didn't ask her to do that. She just decided to do that. The one that I love is that there was a couple whose car broke down, and they still decided not to miss out on the volunteer training on a Saturday. They rented a car so that they could show up to learn how to serve us better on a Sunday. That's the kind of love that goes the extra mile. Devon's small group, is anybody in Devon's small group? They're all second hour people. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But they, last session of small groups, I think they met at a restaurant, if I remember right. What Devon was sharing with me is when the group would meet there and they would talk about life with Jesus and getting closer together and deepening their spiritual lives, they would also leave notes of encouragement on the back of receipts and hand those into the servers. And when the group session was done, after the months of meeting there and Devon was leaving, a bartender stopped him on the way out and said, I'm going to miss you guys because you're the only people who do this, who write encouragement to us as a staff. And what Devon was telling me was so cool about that is that the bartender was not their server, which means the server was bragging about the group behind their back to the other staff at the restaurant about this group that shows up, and things are just better because they're here, because they're choosing to honor people. Paul says your love should practice hospitality, which literally in the Greek means chase hospitality, pursue hospitality. This is beyond entertaining. We're really good at entertaining in LA. Like cleaning up your house, inviting people over that you like, and then putting out a cheese plate. We're really good at entertaining. And that's good. Keep that up. That's really great. But what's odd is making space for people who are not in your tribe and are not convenient and can't pay you back, who may not be able to bring over anything, but might in fact benefit, like the family here who decided to renovate their house so that they could house people who were without a home for a while, including my family 5 years ago. When we started a church and didn't have a paycheck and then got evicted from our house because our landlord was moving in, this family offered to house my family, offer housing for the guy that was sleeping in his car across the street. That's what it's like to chase hospitality. That's what it means to love oddly. We value shocking hospitality here. That's one of the values that we state. And what we want to do is not just prove that by the excellence with which we host people, but the attention that we give to people's needs. Now, where did we get that idea? Jesus, who said, you want to know what God's like? God is like the dad who runs up the driveway to meet the son who squandered everything and brought a bad name on the house. That's what God's like. That's what love's like. Jesus, who went out of his way to sit with the Samaritan woman who was left out and kept out of her community so that he could show her love. That's what Jesus is like. We love people differently. It's different. We're way more than nice to people. Another quality of this kind of love that Paul describes here is we love people's differences differently. We love people's differences differently. The way we embrace differences is different. Here's how he describes it in Romans 12:14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and don't curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in, I love this word picture, harmony with one another. Don't be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Don't be conceited. Don't make this all about you. So I want to save some people some guesswork. If you're praying, God, show me what I need to do, this is probably the one for some people. I won't point out who, but I've got some suspicions. Just kidding, I don't. Or maybe I do. Jesus taught us that real love, the kind of love you really want, is not going to be based on agreement. That is such a flaccid, weak kind of love. I love you because we're on the same team. I love you because we vote the same way. I love you because we believe exactly the same thing down the line. No. Jesus taught us that agreement is cheap love, easy to find. And some of you, the only love you're surrounded with right now, if you're honest with yourself, is agreement-based love. I just love my people. Paul, instead, he promotes this idea of harmony. I love that word picture. A lot of people talk about harmony, but it's just homogeny in disguise. Real harmony means you're coming in at a different note than I'm coming in. And at first it might be a little atonal, it might be a little dissonant, but in great symphonies. That's actually a part of a movement. And both of us, if we stick together and keep singing together, even though those notes are different, they're both going to move a little bit. And eventually it's going to form a harmony which tells and resolves the rest of the story. That is what it's supposed to be in this place. That even though we come at things from very, very different places, it is just logical for us to be changed together. Not to become the same, but like we said last week, to stand out among each other and love that diversity. Where do we get this idea? Jesus. Jesus proved to us that as important as all of those things are about you, your sexuality and your skin color and your bank account, those are important conversations to have. There's just something more significant that was worth dying for. If we can remember that, we can stay unified amongst the exploration of everything else. We love people's differences. We embrace people's differences differently. Lastly, another way that Paul describes this kind of love is that we love different people. And I'm not talking about that guy that's like, oh, he's different. No, we love him too. But I mean, we love people. Some of you are just settling in what I was talking about there. Jesus creates, I believe, a group of people who love people that no one is expecting anyone to love. Specifically, verse 17, if your enemy is hungry, feed him, feed her. If your enemy is thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you're going to heap burning coals on their head, on his head or her head. There's a lot of debate, I don't know why, around what that last part means. As the years have separated us from that sentence, it probably meant a lot to the people who first read it. To us, it doesn't make sense. If it means that it's going to be painful for them, that actually rings true for me. Because even though that's not the goal of loving people, have you ever noticed that people who reject love are just welcoming pain into their lives? So love them anyway. Love people even if they're going to reject your love them anyway. And it says here, I love this line. You could get this tattooed on your forehead. But if you could keep your job. Do not be overcome by evil, it says, but overcome evil with good. Don't be ruled by evil. Don't let evil tell you what to do, but overcome evil with good. Of all the miracles that Jesus performed, reconciliation was his greatest one. Greater than walking on water. Greater than giving sight to a blind person. Reconciling creation with the Creator who loves us was Jesus' greatest miracle, and he had to die to make that happen. So what won't we do to try and build a bridge to people who are far from us and far from God? Where do we get this idea? Jesus. We act in the best interest of people who disagree with us. We act in the best interest of people who don't want to talk to you right now. We act in the best interest of the guy who fired you and the girl who left you. We act in the best interest of the people who may be opposed or insulting to you right now. Now, I always want to add this qualifier here because I think it's important. Jesus never advocated for putting yourself in the way of abuse on purpose, ever. Just because I can love you and build a bridge that at some point maybe you want to walk back across does not mean that I have to trust you. I say it all the time, like I might love you, but I'm not going to let you babysit my kids. What it means is you're walking in forgiveness. You're walking in such a way that should that person decide to take ownership and say, yeah, my choices matter, and I want to begin to rebuild a relationship, that the bridge has been built for them. That choice is yours. We are not accountable for how people treat us, are we? But Jesus followers especially, we are accountable for how we treat other people. Love your enemy as much as you love yourself. We love a different kind of person than the world is used to loving. The world is used to seeing everything binary in ones and zeros and heroes and villains. We just don't see any discrepancy between a person who is far from God and a person who has a lot of hope, if they'd be willing to walk across that bridge. Jesus followers, we've just seen too much to go back now. We have seen way too much of God's mercy to let our opinions be what we're known for. We've seen way too much of God's mercy to let our fear be what we are known for. We have seen way too much of God's mercy to let our hate or our greed be what we're known for. So in view of God's mercy, be transformed by changing your mind and let our love be legendary. Value statements like that are absolutely useless if they just end up on a wall somewhere. Let our love be legendary. Let's show shocking hospitality. Value statements are only powerful if the average person would interact with your family or your organization, and without ever hearing your value statements, they would use some of those words to describe what they experience. So that means it's up to us to choose to bring this into our cultural experience and bring this into the way that we host and care for and serve and pay attention to each other. I would hope that if this is going to be powerful for us, before anybody ever cracked open a Bible, they would show up and they're like, there's just something about these radiites or radials, these ramalama ding dongs, I don't know. They just honor each other. Like, it just seems like competitive spirit doesn't really get much of a platform in that place. The people with the greatest influence are the people who wanted to serve first. It just seems like they proactively look for people's needs, and they go out of their way to try and serve, even if there's no benefit is perceived that was going to come back for them. They just show this shocking hospitality. If you want to celebrate, they're there to party. And I know that's going to be easier for some of you. But if you want to break down, they're going to go there with you too. It doesn't really seem like there's insiders and outsiders there. You know, like when I'm around them, it's like CEOs serve alongside single moms and baristas alongside billionaires. I'm not sure we have a billionaire here yet, but I just want to make sure you feel included. It's hard to tell like who's on staff and who's a volunteer just because everybody's so passionate about welcoming people and about serving to the very best of their ability. You know, if I didn't know any better, I would say that they actually have the best in mind for people who are insulting them. If I didn't know any better, I would think that they have the best, even though I disagree with what the best thing for humans is, it seems like they're motivated to bring the best to people who might have ostracized them or ridiculed them or hated them. People who I suppose look like their enemy. It just seems like this group of people just wants the best for them no matter what. This, by the way, family of God, is God's good, pleasing, and perfect will in Christ Jesus. That our love would be legendary. A love that is so unstoppable that when people experience it, they're going to think it's too good to be true. And then maybe they'll come back for a little bit more, and then they'll think, well, it might not be too good to be true, but it's still a little weird. And then they stick around a little bit longer, and then they want it to be true. And then maybe what they're going to start to think is that every act of hate and every act of violence and every act of exclusion that's been done in the name of Jesus, that was the real distortion, because I found love. Every week we have the privilege of speaking with people who disagree. Every week I know I stand up here and I will say things that, I don't know, half the room disagrees with. And yet some of you, I know, you come back and you invite your friends because you may not buy everything I'm saying up here or we're singing about up here, but you found love here. So what's your one choice this week? What's the one thing you're going to do to play a part in this? Is it going to be finding a way to serve? Is it going to be adjusting your lifestyle a little bit to give? Is it to include someone that might be left out or kept out? What is it? What's the one choice this week? Is it going back and deleting all of your social media history that isn't injecting love and hope into the atmosphere? Maybe that's the simple choice. Is it forgiving somebody who does not deserve it? Because guess what? Neither did you. What is it? We've said this series that you do not have to choose to be a part of this family. You don't have to. But whatever family you choose, I so hope that it is a family that knows how to love you beyond your usefulness, knows how to love people that they do not like, that they actively, sacrificially, oddly love everybody, love you because you are worth it, because Jesus proved it. Let me pray for us. God, thank you so much for letting us get together today, giving us life today. We never want to take that for granted. What I pray, God, though, is that as we go back to the rest of life, because this hour in some ways does not represent, it may inspire us for the rest of life, but it doesn't represent normal life for us. So as we go back into the office tomorrow, back onto the campus tomorrow, God, back just into parenting tomorrow and getting down on the rug and playing toys with our kids, as we go back into that difficult relationship this afternoon with the unresolved conflict and the painful conversations, what I pray, God, is that you would first of all inform us, how are we supposed to love? What would love demand of us? And then compel us, give us the courage to act on it. To be known first and foremost by how oddly we love people. May that be the mark of this family. Jesus, we pray in your name. Amen.